What is going on, everybody? It is James and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing Australia versus Finland. For those who do not know, my name is James and I'm Australian. I was born in Melbourne, Australia, but I am half Finnish and currently live in Helsinki, and I've been here for the past about 5.5 years, I think. And as you can see behind me, there's a full-on snowstorm. We are here in the deep of winter in Finland, and today I wanted to make a video comparing the two with a little point system to see who takes the crown. Before we jump into it, I want to say that if you are not subscribed to the channel, look at this. You should probably subscribe. Basically, everyone who's watching this video is not subscribed, so please do subscribe. It would help me a lot. So we are going to jump straight into it, and we are going to compare the two countries on many different categories and see which ones get the points or which ones tie. So let's see who's going to win on Australia versus Finland. Let's start number one with the food. Now, I don't even know so much if Australia has like a lot of strong cultural foods like Finland has. Like in Finland, we'll have like mämmi or maksalaatiko, karjalan piiraka, all of these things. In Australia, I remember growing up, we just ate a lot of meat, also a lot of veg, but like a lot of fish and a lot of meat.
Get a meat stick in ya.
The one thing I would say that if we have like a national food, I guess there's like kangaroo meat, which a lot of you Finns probably haven't eaten. So on the food category, Finland is actually going to win. So we have 1 point to Finland and 0 points to Australia currently. On to the next one, we have nature and wildlife. Now that is interesting because Australia does have pretty incredible nature. We have the large outback, so a huge basically desert area, barren wasteland, which is super, super hot. And you won't find too many animals there. You'll find scorpions and snakes and this kind of stuff. But then of course we have the beautiful oceans where you'll find sharks and turtles and even whales. And then we have, you know, the foresty areas where you'll also find all sorts of horrible creatures and also in your own home. So in Finland, there's just a lot of forest. And then you have your lakes. Now, whilst I would say Australia's wildlife is a lot more interesting, like I say, I've always liked sharks. I'm like super fascinated by them and like I want to swim with them. And I'm unfortunately going to have to give this one to Finland as well. And it's for one main reason is that in Finland, I can like comfortably go to the forest and camp without thinking I'm going to die. In Australia, it is true. It's not as bad as people think, but in Australia, there are a lot of animals that are going to hurt you. So Finland is going to win this one just for the simple fact that, you know, if I go outside here, I don't think I'm going to die. In Australia, you have to be a lot more careful. Okay, number 3. This one's going to be a bit of a no-brainer, the weather. Now in Finland, as you can see behind me, there is a full-on snowstorm happening. It's been happening for the past 2 days here in Helsinki. In Australia, the winters are very, very pleasant in most places. I was from Melbourne, which is south, it's in Victoria. And I remember the winters being, you know, a little bit chilly, but nothing too bad. We would have some days which were a few degrees, but for the most part, it was quite mild. And then obviously in summer, we have super hot summers in Australia, but I would still say just like the general weather is a lot better. So Australia is going to win on this front 100% because I prefer the weather a lot more back at home. All right, number 4, let's head into music. This is an interesting one. So I never got so much into Australian music. Like when I was growing up and I spent a lot of time at skate parks when I was younger, there was like Australian rap was really popular. If there's any Aussies watching this, you might know artists like 360 and Cursor and these guys. They were super popular when I was growing up and I did listen to them a lot. But also ever since moving to Finland, I've listened to a lot of Finnish music. And to anyone who's been following me for a while, you know, I was in the music industry myself and a lot of my friends here work in the music industry here in Finland and work on some really, really big projects. So because of that, I've also ended up listening to a lot of Finnish music and enjoying a lot of Finnish music. And also I guess you could say I've been more connected to the music because I've met so many of these artists that I listen to. So I would have to say on this category, Finland for me is going to win. 5, we are going into the sports category. Now, here in Finland, there are some very popular national sports and sports that a lot of people play. For example, ice hockey is massive here, and I'm sure most Finns watching this right now love ice hockey and are super into it. And they go to Tori when Finland wins, and you know, they drink themselves to sleep when Finland doesn't. But I never got too much into it. I know you guys are gonna hate me, but just hear me out. Ice hockey, it never really resonated with me so much. Now, growing up in Australia, I played a lot of sports growing up. I played rugby union when I was younger. I played a ton of cricket and I also played football. Now, the rugby union and the cricket are very, very Australian sports. For me, it's just going to have to be Australia, and Australia will have to take the point here because I absolutely love Aussie sports. Number 6, outdoor activities. Now, I think in Australia, it's a lot more diverse in the way that there's all sorts of outdoor activities. You know, people will go to the Great Barrier Reef and go snorkel on the reef, or they'll go deep sea fishing because we have the oceans. Or then, you know, people might go riding dirt bikes and quad bikes in the desert. or people go camping, or people go hiking, because we have a couple mountains as well in like near New South Wales. So there's a lot of different types of outdoor sports and outdoor activities. And then in Finland, I would say we have a lot, like for example, there's orienteering, like going through the forest, picking berries in summer, going to summer cottage and doing the swimming and the sauna. And then in winter, of course, doing the avanto and the cross-country skiing and these things. I would say for this category, Finland will actually win for me, which you guys may have found surprising. It's just that I think I've gotten more into the kind of national outdoor sports whilst being here than I did in Australia. In Australia, really outside, all I was ever doing was playing sports and at the skate park. That's kind of what I did growing up. So I never really got too into it, and I guess like the age maybe has a part to play. Number 7, let's move on to an interesting category and switch it up a bit. We're gonna go with safety. So I'm gonna look at the country as a whole. Of course, in both countries, there's safer areas and worse areas. And of course, Australia is a much bigger country with much bigger cities, like in Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane and Perth, for example. But overall, I would say Finland is a much safer country than Australia. But you know, I grew up in Melbourne. I've been to all parts of Melbourne. I've lived in many different areas in Melbourne, and I can tell you for a fact that Helsinki, which is the capital here, of course, the capital in Australia is Canberra, but if I compare where I live in Helsinki to where I lived in Melbourne, Helsinki is a much safer city. And I feel a lot safer out at night by myself in certain places. In Melbourne, there were a lot of rougher areas, and I've definitely seen them, and you have to be a lot more careful there. So for safety, Finland is going to 100% win, and that is just the reality of it. Number 8, holidays and celebrations. So these will be things like Christmas and national days and these things. So I don't remember so many of the national days, honestly, growing up in Australia. I remember Anzac Day, which was like a veteran memorial day, was a really big thing, and I quite enjoyed that day. And then of course, you know, we have our Christmas and our Easter and these kinds of things. In Australia, Christmas, it happens in summer. So I remember usually Christmas is going to the beach or having a barbecue and having your neighbors around, which is cool. It's nice. It's very different to what us Finns here in Finland experience in Christmas. It's usually very gray and wet, and we're inside with our families, eating laatikos and all sorts of Finnish things. Then of course here we have, you know, Juhannus and Vappu and these traditions, which I absolutely love. For example, I love midsummer. It's just, there's something so perfect about that day as long as you're at the summer cottage and the weather doesn't suck. So Finland wins. Let's go to 9, cost of living. This one will be simple and I won't need to talk too much about this. We're going to use cities as an example. Of course, I think always when you're outside of cities, you can get things for cheaper, but where I was in Melbourne, or if you live in Sydney or Brisbane or whatever, and where I live here in Helsinki, the cost of living in Finland is definitely lower. Finland does have very high taxes. Australia has fairly high taxes too. I haven't done the check recently how close they are, but I think it's still a little bit lower in Australia. And there's a bit more, some laws that might be a little bit more lenient, but still the average rent in Australia for an apartment is much higher than in Finland. And the cost of living, it is just quite high. For example, if you live in Sydney, it is very expensive, I've heard. Salaries can not always be so great as well. So, you know, when you balance all of these things up together and then factor in your expenses and taxes and these things, Finland overall, I would say, does have a lower cost of living, at least from what I've experienced. I think it can be different depending on how you choose to live. The cost of living, Finland is going to take a point. And this brings us on to our final category, which is going to be urban life. By the way, I have not been counting these, so I don't know who's winning or if this is going to end in a tie. I hope it doesn't end in a tie. But urban life, so that just means the city life. The city life here in Helsinki compared to that of Melbourne and Sydney. And I've been to many cities in Australia, in Gold Coast and Sydney. I've been all around. So in Helsinki, you know, we have a bit of a nightlife, but it's not that big. And many Finns who live in other places in Finland will say when they come to Helsinki, they don't like it because it's so busy. But of course, it's all just, you know, perspective and what you're used to. Now in Helsinki, you know, we have a nightlife. People go outside, they walk around. There's a few nice things to do around here and a few points of interest to check. In Australia, there's massive nightlife. There's a lot of skyscrapers. There's cool rooftop bars. There's a shit ton of activities to do in the city, as you can imagine, because the cities are so big. So I would say overall, Australia wins here on the urban life. I would just say the cities are more exciting. But overall, I would just say there's more to do. There's more fun to be had in Australian cities. So Australia will win this point. So this brings us to our result, making Finland, the winner of this, which actually surprised me. So when I came up with the concept of this video, I didn't like think about it already before, like who's gonna win them. I wanted to just like get the camera rolling and actually think about it and just make like a completely unbiased and honest answer. And Finland has won this with flying colors. So I guess I prefer Finland to Australia, which is funny because then in some areas I would say I prefer Australia a lot more. That was Australia versus Finland. I hope you all enjoyed it. And by the way, I would love to do a video like this again. So I have lived in countries like Singapore, Macau, Hong Kong, really interesting countries. So if you want me to do, for example, Hong Kong versus Finland, please like this video and leave a comment. I think this could be a really fun little series on this channel. And by the way, the reason I was gone for a long time, I had briefly opened up about it in the last video. The past month, I went through a pretty rough mental period. I guess I can honestly say I was mentally unwell, dealing with really kind of extreme amounts of depression and anxiety and other things that I don't want to get too much into the reasons why. It's very complicated, I think, but I really needed to take a minute. I wasn't doing well, but I'm feeling a lot better now. My routine has been great. I'm back at the gym hard. And here we are in front of the camera again. So thank you guys so much for your support. I'm really sorry for the break. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again, and stay tuned for the next videos. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.